The 2000s was a particularly dark time for horror movies. Not in terms of quality, in my opinion, but in terms of subject matter. There was a large push for horror movies of the time to be grittier, more nihilistic, to tell more mature stories that didn't hold back. And with that push, we got a lot of movies that I honestly revisit quite a lot. Movies like Saw, Martyrs, and Inside all were extremely dark films that blew up in popularity. And one of the biggest production companies trying to push these types of films was Dimension. In the 90s and 2000s, Dimension would produce some of the most iconic horror films of all time, including the Scream franchise, From Dusk Till Dawn, and many, many more. But there was a subset of films that Dimension didn't specifically want distributed by their main company, so they founded Dimension Extreme, a way to put out those movies that were just too extreme for their main company. And one movie that they released has stuck with me to this day. This movie gave me such a visceral, emotional reaction that I knew I had to revisit it. It's a movie that I consider to be one of the best horror movies of the 2000s, and today we're going to talk about it. So let's discuss Eden Lake. The film starts by introducing us to one of our two main characters, an elementary school teacher named Jenny. At the end of the school day, she runs out to meet her boyfriend and, I suppose, future fiance, Steve. Together they drive off and begin their journey to the titular Eden Lake for a romantic weekend. On their way there, we listen to parents speaking about their troubled children over the radio. Kids carelessly pass in front of Steve and Jenny's car on their bikes. On their way to dinner, a family steals their parking spot. And all of these little inconveniences and inconsiderate people create a world filled with uncaring children and even more uncaring parents. It honestly reminds me a lot of the introduction of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but swapping the rural American setting for a more uncomfortable suburban British one. And all of this is not exactly the most subtle foreshadowing, but it's effective. I feel just as uncomfortable as Jenny and Steve do in this strange little town. And something that I find refreshing is that it takes that trope that we've seen a million times, the something is wrong with this place story, and turns it into something more unique and grounded. This isn't a town of crazy horror movie villains. It's a dysfunctional place with people who continue a toxic cycle of childish behavior. It's a horror that we discover, not of crazed psychos, but one of people, and what people can ultimately do. After spending the night in this lovely little town, the couple is back on the road and eventually arrive at Eden Lake, though it's not exactly how Steve remembers it. He had been here a few times before and it was originally a public quarry, now rebranded and rebuilt into a gated community. But that isn't going to stop them from enjoying their weekend. After driving through the forest, they come across an opening in the gate. They drive down winding dirt roads and finally stop at an overlook and take in the beautiful view. Jenny and Steve hike down the hill, ready to start their vacation, but as they do, they stop. A boy is sat down studying something, and Jenny approaches him and tries to make small talk, but the boy brushes her off, saying he shouldn't talk to strangers. No offense taken, nothing of concern in this gated community. So the two leave him to his business, but keep this boy in mind for later. And now finally, after 2 days of travel, the couple sits out and can finally enjoy themselves. But that peace doesn't last long with the arrival of our antagonists. A group of rambunctious teens, as is thematically consistent, disrupt the peace. And it seems like this may have been the final straw for Steve. He comes out of the lake and walks over to the teens to politely confront them, but it doesn't go over so well. He asks calmly if they can turn down their music. You know, it's a big beach, he says. But they just continue to antagonize Steve in the most annoying and aggressive way possible. Just have a listen to some of these kids.
She's a
Who are you calling a And what are you looking at? Are you looking at my
These kids make me so insanely mad. The way they talk may seem exaggerated, but I remember growing up knowing kids who behaved exactly like this. Not a care in the world for anybody else and so antagonistic and defensive whenever they're pressed about anything. The characterization of these kids is honestly just perfect. And just like how I would honestly probably do, Steve gives up and the teens continue to pester the couple in ways that I don't think YouTube would love if I showed. But eventually they leave and we can get back to our tranquil trip to the lake, but it won't stay that way for long. Something that and I feel like most people, really struggle with when watching horror movies is empathizing with the characters. Horror for a long time has been structured around disposable characters that we want to see get killed in the most over-the-top ways possible. And even when some films try to make you relate to their characters, they fall flat on their face. But the reason I wanted to talk about Eden Lake is because it is one of the few movies that I've seen that gives me such visceral reactions, and it may be the strongest example of characters in a horror movie that I genuinely felt awful for. Sure, there's some tropey things in this film, but you're gonna find out soon why I have such strong emotions with this movie. After spending the night together, Jenny wakes up and sees that they accidentally left their food out all night and it's rotted. So the two get into their car to go get some breakfast. Steve fixes the tire, and once they make their way back into town, they once again cross paths with the teens from before. They taunt him about his tire, and Steve gives chase, hoping to scare them, but they ultimately get away. Fast forwarding to breakfast, the strange behavior of the townsfolk continues. Steve presses their waitress about the kids, saying that the parents should know about their kids harassing them and popping their tire. Immediately, the waitress switches from welcoming to hostile. Something is off with these people, and at this point, it might be smart to just let it go and go home. But, understandably to me, Steve doesn't want to. As they're driving, Steve spots the kids' bikes scattered in someone's lawn. He gets out to give these people a piece of his mind, but as he enters the home, it looks like it's empty.
Come on, love, you're blocking my drive!
Looks like the owner has arrived, and he is just as unpleasant as the children. He makes his way into his house, as Steve narrowly evades him, hiding upstairs and eventually climbing out of a window to avoid getting caught. So, finally realizing it's better not to break and enter, Steve and Jenny decide it's best to just go back to the beach and enjoy the rest of their weekend. And for Steve, it is hopefully where he's going to be able to propose. But
Steve, where's the beach bag?
He was right here.
seems that someone has stolen their bag, and as they soon discover, their car as well. With no other options, they hike through the woods, their weekend ruined and just wanting to go home. But this is where mild annoyance transforms into active threats. The teenagers nearly run over the two with their own car before driving off, and as it gets darker, the couple stumbles across the teens drinking and partying in the woods. It's time for this to end. Steve confronts them once again, just wanting his car, his phone, and his wallet returned. But, as is expected from these kids, they continue to escalate the situation. Everything is ramping up. Steve approaches one of the kids, pulls out a knife. One loses control of their dog, and in the scuffle, somehow, the dog accidentally gets stabbed. And this is where everything goes south. A chase ensues, and Jenny and Steve try to make their escape. However, as they're driving, they get stuck, and the kids start to pelt their car with rocks, shattering the windshield. They knock out the headlights and jump on the car, but luckily the car gets unstuck. Steve floors it, trying to get away, but without their headlights and in the middle of the night, he can't see anything. Steve is incapacitated, stuck underneath a branch, so he tells Jenny to just run and find them help. And after a moment, she reluctantly does, running off into the dark, not knowing what awaits her. As she goes deeper and deeper, she can hear the kids surrounding her, and luckily she's able to hide and avoid detection. But unfortunately, Steve doesn't share in her luck. While conceptually this might seem a little out there and far-fetched, Eden Lake has me hooked. And if you are at all interested in true crime, you know that people, especially kids who have grown up in toxic environments, are capable of truly disturbing things. This is the point in the movie where things are going to get a little too extreme, so for monetization purposes, I'll have to be censoring some of the visuals, but I'll describe them as best as I can. As morning comes, Jenny's search for her husband begins. After finding their car empty, she follows a trail of clues to eventually find him. Surrounded by the kids, tied to a post with barbed wire, and being interrogated. At this point, even some of the kids know this is going too far, but their quote-unquote leader, Brent, wants his revenge. He threatens one of the kids, telling him to hurt Steve, and if he doesn't, there is going to be dire consequences. Brent hands this kid the knife, and Paige, the girl of the group, starts to record everything on her phone, and so it begins. I obviously can't show any of it, but each of the kids takes their turn hurting Steve in an extremely hard to watch scene, and meanwhile Jenny just has to watch everything since that's all she can do. But she realizes something. One of the kids has Steve's phone, and so using the Bluetooth navigation system, she connects to the phone and dials the police. But Brent notices the phone dialing and knows she has to be close. So with her cover blown, Jenny has to make a run for it, and in doing so, giving Steve the opportunity to escape. Jenny and Steve both get away from the kids for now, but Steve is severely injured and needs medical attention. They stop at a wooden hut in the woods to try and take care of Steve, but Steve, knowing there's a good chance he won't make it, finally tells Jenny about the ring, how he wanted to take her to Africa on their honeymoon, and just as quickly as this moment started, it comes to an end. They hear the kids approaching, and as they bust down the door, it seems like Jenny and Steve have escaped once again. In reality, however, they're hiding in the water underneath the building. Knowing that Steve is injured, the kids know they couldn't have gotten far, so they head back out on their hunt, giving Jenny and Steve some room to breathe. But Steve is in no shape to go anywhere quickly, so they devise a plan for Jenny to go out once again and hopefully find help. And with that, she heads back into the unknown. The next little bit of this film is the classic cat and mouse game. Jenny avoiding all of the kids until she eventually is found, but not by Brent or the other kids. The boy from earlier, who we find out is named Adam. He finds her and thankfully decides to take her back to safety. Or at least, that's what we thought.
Hold now, brown cow.
The kids have tied Jenny and her husband up, and their plan? They're going to light them both on fire. Brent forces Adam to throw a match onto them, and Paige continues to film everything. After some persuasion, Adam does so under the threat of his own life being taken, and we watch as Steve slowly burns to death. But in doing so, the rope keeping Jenny restrained burns away as well. She jolts up, grabbing a piece of wood that's on fire to defend herself. She knocks over a gas canister and lights it to create a barrier between her and Brent. And as she runs, Brent grabs Adam and screams that if she doesn't come back, then he's next. But with Jenny in full survival mode, she makes her choice and has to listen to some of the most haunting screams I think I've ever heard. This is the final stretch. Jenny is able to fight back and eventually kill some of the people who are chasing her. Jenny is able to commandeer a car from one of the kids and make it all the way back into the town. But once she does, she nearly gets into a car accident and crashes into someone's front lawn. She gets out of the car and follows the sound of music. A party is going on, and she interrupts it. They take Jenny inside, and everyone is trying to figure out what to do. Everyone seems concerned, but I honestly hope you are ready for one of the most soul-crushing endings to a film that I have ever experienced. Throughout the film, we've met some truly despicable people, even adults. And can you take a guess as to whose house that she just happens to be in? Brent's father tries to calm Jenny down, but we all know this can't end well for her. In their distorted minds, Jenny has gone on a rampage, and just like with Brent's dog, she knows they're going to want revenge. Jenny hides in the bathroom, no way out this time, and we just have to sit and wait for the inevitable. Brent's dad gets a hold of her. They drag her back into the bathroom, and all we hear is screams. Brent gets sent up to his bedroom and deletes all of the videos from Paige's phone, and that is Eden Lake. Everything about this movie works so well for me. The incredible twist on a long-running trope, the characterization of every single person, and even the motivations behind every single action. Even though these children do unforgivable things, it creates such a clear and honestly pretty realistic scenario where something like this could happen. It does indulge in the horror a bit towards the end, but at that point I was already hooked. It was refreshing to actually be rooting for characters in a horror film, while also getting to feel such strong emotions. And that is the reason why I think we watch horror. We want to feel scared, or shocked, or in the case of this film, very, very upset. And something about this movie was upsetting to me in a way I've never really felt before. It reminded me of some real-life cases surrounding children and adults, and even some films I had seen before. Bully was a 2001 film directed by Larry Clark, and it was based on a real-life case involving dysfunctional teenagers. Or there was 2007's An American Crime, based on the tragic case of Sylvia Likens. Something about these crimes and these films feels so real to me because it's so hard to imagine such young people doing such terrible things. But ultimately, these things do happen. And with all that being said, check out this film and don't forget to subscribe for more. I'm Nightmare Movies, and I'll see you guys next time.